Hey, thanks for joining us here on 90s Plus. I'm 90s Meteorologist Chris Bianchi. The look at this weekend's snow, what you can expect, and just kind of get into some more detail on some of the forecast uncertainty, what to look for, and maybe when we'll have a better idea about forecast totals and things of that sort, and also, of course, those impacts to you. But I think top line takeaway, still a lot of uncertainty. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, January the 30th. Still in some cases, maybe 5 days out from the bulk of the storm arriving to us here in Colorado. At this point, it looks like we'll be on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday looking at a rain-snow mix depending on your elevation, depending on your location, and it's kind of contingent on a couple of different factors. But the reason we're highlighting this, why we've been talking about this for the last little while, is this does have that higher end potential. There's a lot of water, a lot of moisture associated with this storm system. That means we're going to be looking at a higher than usual potential for big impacts, but 1-2 degrees is going to make all the difference in terms of whether we're talking about a ton of rain, a ton of snow, or just somewhere in between, and that'll be mainly focused on the Denver area. So hopefully it gives you a good idea about things. Let's kind of start by looking at the overview. So heavy rain snow mix likely in the Denver area Friday through Sunday, probably Friday night through Sunday. I think the bulk of it will be Friday night and Saturday. Mountains, we'll get our snow a little earlier than that. It's most of the day Friday and Saturday when we see the snow in the high country. And because of the temperature component of all this and the amount of water that we're dealing with, there's higher than usual uncertainty with the forecast. So usually by now I've got usually an idea about what we're looking at. Still some thoughts, but we're still just, again, a ways away from kind of getting some of those more fine-tuned forecasts. So here's kind of the overall takeaway. By the way, as you're watching, this is probably really warm outside. It's been warm all week long. As of Tuesday, Denver, third consecutive day at 60 or above. And that's thanks to a ridge of high pressure. That's that H on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. That moves away for Thursday and into Friday, and that'll open the door for a strong storm system to move its way onto the west coast, and that is going to be our storm system of note here. So this storm moves its way in tomorrow for Wednesday night and to Thursday, and then by the time this scoots east, by Friday morning, we'll start to see that snow move its way into the San Juans, the Western Slope, Alamo Mesa. We'll see our snow first across western Colorado, and then eventually as we head through the morning on Friday, that will cover the entire mountains, basically all the mountains for us here. The heaviest snow will probably be in southwestern Colorado. And then first in the Denver area, it looks like those impacts will start Friday afternoon, Friday night for us. So if you're traveling to or from the mountains, the earlier you go on Friday, the better. If you're heading to the San Juans, I would probably try and get that done Thursday because Friday looks pretty rough basically all day long. For the Denver area, if you're heading up to the I-70 mountains, to Steamboat, to 285 down over Monarch Pass or something like that, the earlier the better you go on. The earlier you go on Friday, the better you'll probably end up being. Snows most of Saturday, and then by Sunday we taper things on down. But still a lot of questions here for the Denver area. So this is kind of how I would label it or characterize it at this point, is in terms of that snow potential for the Denver area. This does look like we'll be looking at a snow shovel worthy snowfall. So it's usually 3-4 inches plus. That's not a guarantee. Still a lot of, basically any option from 1 to about 15 inches of snow is still on the table and realistic on the table. But at this point, it's my current lean would be something along the lines of 2 to 4, 3 to 6, maybe a 4 to 8 inch kind of snow. That's something like that right now would be the current thought for us. But one of the reasons we're kind of highlighting this, and what I mentioned with that kind of 1 to 15 inch scenario, I know that's all over the map. We have a lot of water associated with the system, an unusually high amount. I'm going to show you why in just a second. But we have, this weekend, we're likely to be talking about 3/4 to an inch worth of total precipitation. For context, over the full month of February, we average about 0.4 of an inch of total precipitation. Again, that is the full month's entire average. And we're going to be probably about doubling that, if not more than that, in just one storm this weekend. So this is an unusually high amount of water for this time of year with the system. And so here's the setup. Here's the reason why we're talking about so much water. So the setup is we get an area low pressure that moves into the west coast. That's going to move, obviously bring with it a ton of moisture out of the Pacific Ocean, tons of it. Then that H on the right-hand side of your screen, that is a blocking area high pressure. Think of that as kind of a stop sign. So that low, as it tries to advance east, it kind of can't, because that area high pressure is kind of locked into place because of the upper level wind pattern. Point being, that low just can't move, so it's going to sit and spin and drop moisture not only out of the Pacific, but eventually, once it crosses the continental divide, it'll be able to pull up some moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico as well. Now, the, I suppose, issue with that, at least if you're a snow lover, is that if you're pulling moisture out of the Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico, that is subtropical air, right? If you've ever been to the Gulf to Southern California, you know that those aren't cold places. So the source for that moisture, not exactly warm places, and that means we're going to struggle to get those temperatures at or below freezing, and that means we just don't have a ton of cold air to deal with for this upcoming storm system. And that means, again, we're going to probably struggle to get those temperatures below freezing, and that's going to be a big issue and the big forecast challenge as we head over the next few days, is do we have enough cold air? So here's the way I would kind of label things a little bit for you in terms of what to look for and where we might end up with those highest totals. I think the highest odds for heavy snow will be in the Palmer Divide and south and west of Denver. Two main reasons for that. One, once you get above 6,000 feet, those temperatures drop from Denver, probably by about 3-4 degrees Fahrenheit. That will probably make the difference. That could just about make the difference. So you go to Castle Rock, you could end up with 8-9 inches of heavy wet snow, while in downtown Denver we only end up with, say, 3-4-5 inches of heavy wet snow. It's that kind of difference that we could be looking at. There's going to be some localized banding in play as well. So lots of different things to watch for, but this is one reason why I think that the Palmer Divide and the southern foothills could end up with those highest totals. The other one I would say, and this is also important to note, is that we're going to be also looking at that potential for some pretty heavy upslope flow. So those winds out of the north and east will kind of move against the mountains, and that'll be looking at some of that heavy, wet snowfall in those areas. So 7-day forecast, again, for Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. It is going to be snowing pretty heavily at times, just depends on your elevation and just exactly how that works. But of course, here at 9 News, we have our automated, we put our forecasts in by hand. So our weather team, we're manually inputting those forecast labels, and we're going to be talking about some of that here as we head over the next few days. But I think those automated weather apps, so think about Apple Weather, things like that, not to single out Apple Weather, but any automated weather app is going to struggle with this because computer forecast models are just kind of all over the place right now, and they're still kind of figuring it out, but we kind of know which models tend to have the best idea about what might end up happening. So those weather apps are just not going to be accurate this far out. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight about what we could be looking at over the next couple of days. But in the meantime, top line takeaways, still a lot of uncertainty. Friday night through Sunday, we'll be looking at that potential for heavy wet snowfall, and there is that high-end potential for 6+ inches here in Denver just because of the amount of water that's associated with it. Current lean would be towards more of a medium-sized storm, but we'll keep you posted with the very latest on all this right here on 9 News and on 9 News Plus. So be sure to tune on in as we head over the next couple of days.